This is not the first time we met. Maybe you think it is, but it really isn't. Well, maybe it is the first time we meet. But if this is indeed your first time here, let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Hemi. I used to be the blind underworld VTuber that probably you have heard of. I haven't been on the scene for quite a bit some time, at least this past 2 months, because I was on hiatus for my new debut. Well, a lot of people have asked me about this, and the answer to that is that I just genuinely preferred being a seal over a dark underworld conqueror. Since all of my content has gone to members only, I decided to make a brand new version of my older The Case of the Blind VTuber video and bring it up to the surface with my new VTuber model. The reason I also decided to come up here is because there have been some updates. Specifically today, we are going to be talking about a little bit about my case. 2, I'm going to be answering some of my most frequently asked questions throughout this whole year as a blind VTuber and somebody who is struggling to properly stream. And number 3, I will be also talking a bit about some of the updates and how my health has been recently, which is starting to worry me slightly. Not too much, just slightly. And let's get somewhere a little more comfy, because I'm starting to lose my head out here with all this sun. So, let's get on to this, shall we? It all started back when I was around the age of 10, when I just hit puberty. I noticed that my vision was being depleted, so I ended up going to my ophthalmologist, who ended up discovering that there was something truly wrong with me, and not the bestest kind of way. So I ended up being sent to a clinic in a completely different city. I was just to meet a doctor, and back in the day when I was 10, technology was that advanced, so I never really ended up being diagnosed because nobody really knew what I had. And well, I was just to wait since technology wasn't that advanced. It was until I got into high school that I was diagnosed with Stargardt, and it was a very awkward moment as well because, you know, Stargardt wasn't that common. So there weren't a lot of kids that actually were diagnosed at the time, and my doctor couldn't even identify how exactly this happened. So that was suggested to take a genetic test. I don't know much about the process, but basically what it's supposed to do is to basically identify your entire family tree and how exactly you ended up inheriting everything. And yeah, I mean like your entire family tree, a really big portion of it. And what that does is that basically you'll be able to tell how exactly this disorder got inherited and passed down to you. Because none of my parents, none of my grandparents had it, and it is generally very unlucky of me. And I didn't know about all these papers when they got released, and just until a few years ago, and I was never really looking too deep into them. For some reason, my parents never really told me about it. As weird as that sounds, I was never really told the big news, which I ended up finding out like last year when I told you guys on stream, and I was really surprised about it. The papers informed that I was basically a mutant. I basically had all of those genes that my parents and possibly grandparents had, and they got mutated. Not all of them, just a couple of them. 9, 12, I'm not really good at math. They all had to do with the ABCA4 gene, which is responsible for your vision and what you see. What is crazy about this, what I mentioned earlier, is the fact that I'm the only person worldwide who has these 3 kinds of eye mutations. Considering that there are other people who have similar conditions to mine, and I happen to be one of those chosen people, is kind of unlucky. It is worse than losing your 50-50 in Genshin Impact. 3 times, dare I say 4. Those mutations, or this case or whatever, just has never been written down. Nobody really even knows about it. So yeah, it is slightly complicated. But what about what's been happening recently, you may be asking? A couple months back, I noticed that my vision was filled with a bunch of little dots. And I ended up being slightly terrified because why the hell do I have little dots all over my field of view? So I ended up visiting the doctor again throughout the summer, and I ended up being informed that I officially have myopia. However, I've had astigmatism since I was 3 years old, and it's something that I've been dealing with alongside with my disease, which isn't something that I hated or I had a hard time dealing with. However, now with myopia, my doctor gave me a new prescription and told me that I should go get new glasses, which I ended up doing. Probably one of the biggest mistakes of my entire life. For some of you, this may not seem like a very hard thing to do on paper. However, ever since I changed my glasses, it has become even harder for me to go outside because I cannot distinguish if I'm walking on the sidewalk or the street and I'm getting my swooped by a whole car. When you change your glasses, it is hard for you to get used and adapt to them because simply your eyes are not used to the lens and it can take up to months to get used to a certain lens. The other thing that my doctor told me is that yes, those dots could be related to your myopia, but it could also be neurological related. I ended up going to the neurologist and she told me that there was nothing wrong with me. And then the last option I had was to visit a therapist. Yes, you heard me right, a therapist. My doctor clearly told me that it literally has nothing to do with my disease. So could it be psychologically related? I don't know, am I just unlucky again? Ever since then, I've been trying to adjust to my new glasses and basically get a hang of everything. I wouldn't say that the dots have fixed themselves because they're all everywhere, and apparently it has to do with the gel in your eye. According to my ophthalmologist, there is a 1 to 4% chance that I could possibly lose that gel inside my eyes, and if I do end up seeing any dark spots or just blackness, I should immediately go to the doctors. I think I'm fine though, because it's been at least a couple months since I visited, so I think I'm fine from that. But it's still something that lingers in my mind that could go wrong, because God knows. Now that we're actually done with that, let's go over to the questions. I asked you guys to give me under one of my posts some questions regarding my disability, and I will try my best to answer them with as much detail as I can, so get ready for a ride. We're going for a long one. I know you said that there is no cure for Stargardt, but is there any known treatment that can help you to slow down its progression? Well, sort of. It isn't something that is very recommended to any client. However, it is something that is suggested for those who have already lost like 90+% of their vision, meaning that they can barely see anything. And that is pills. They're very experimental and they're not given to anyone out of nowhere. So my doctor never really advised me to get any of these on my hand. Next question. How are you coping with future prospects mentally? There are things that I do struggle with. Doing chores isn't the easiest thing for me to do. It is definitely taking more time than usual and it can be quite frustrating. I don't use transport. I live at a place where it's very convenient for me to go anywhere, and I usually have my assistant with me if I have to go anywhere, and if not, then perhaps a friend. But I'm never alone outside, and that is pretty good for me considering I know that if I went out there by myself, I would be long gone. Off to the next question. I was just wondering what country you're from. Is it just the character Greek? I'm sorry to break it down to you, I am in fact Greek. Next question. Hey, I was just wondering, what keeps you motivated to stream and why did you choose this job instead of something a little less visually taxing? First of all, VTubing isn't a job for me. I always wanted to stream, and it all started from a long time ago. I do understand that it's quite taxing, especially VTubing. If I didn't do VTubing, I would probably do webcam streaming. And the reason I didn't want to do webcam streaming is not just because I was afraid of just my privacy, but also because I think that it would be a little disturbing to see a girl zooming into her face in her camera a lot because she doesn't know exactly how close her face is to the screen. It would be slightly more disturbing than watching another usual streamer. So because of that, I didn't want to become a webcam streamer. Well, I'm just an anime girl behind the screen. I mean, in your screen, not behind the screen. You know what I mean. I wanted to share my problems with other people. I know it is not the best way to starting streaming career, but I say, yeah, I want to share my problems with other people. Like, yeah, I mainly wanted to do this because I wanted to have fun. For me, VTubing is what brings me joy into this void. Could you maybe use a TV as a monitor? Thing is, I have considered getting myself a second monitor on my desk. However, it isn't as possible since my desk is super small, and since I got a new PC, it takes way too much space. Having my iPad really helps reading chat, but it still is somewhat strange since I cannot have a second monitor to look at other things like my OBS or my Vtuber model on a separate tab. So another thing I noticed is that a lot of you guys believe that meaning that you have 70% blindness, that means that your vision just gets dark, like in video games. Unfortunately, this isn't true. In fact, you can still see things around you, just with way less detail, and as you lose more of your vision, it gets way less, and you can barely see anything. Does VTubing help you show sides of yourself that feel like kinda can't? I, over time, realized that I never really thought I would make such funny jokes about eating my chat's socks or shoes. I always feel happy creating content because ever since I can remember, I've been always creating content specifically for platforms, multiple platforms, and it makes me very happy to know that I exist here and I have a presence here. So if someone else had the same condition as you, what would you want to tell them? I'm not really good with words, and I think you have all caught up on that. If I was given this chance, I would probably just tell them that sometimes you just gotta appreciate small things in life and be grateful for what you have, even if either that's a struggle that you have, or a problem, or a dysfunction, or a disability, or a disorder, or whatever it is. You should just enjoy the present and be grateful for what you got because you are capable of doing things that other people can't. Chase your dream and just be yourself. It's all gonna be worth it in the end. Jesus, that sounds more like a speech rather than me myself. Well, I hope you took it at least to heart, because I don't usually make speeches like this. What are some of the ways you cope with your disorder? Try my best to be proud of myself because I think that I've done things that normal people wouldn't be able to do, some of them at least. So whatever these things are, even if they're small ones, you know, just be happy that you're able to do things that some people can't. And be proud of yourself because in the end of the day, if you're not proud of yourself, who is going to be? In theory, could a seal also have your condition? Well, if it did, I would feel more close to my species. Why are there so many people asking about me being able to play FPS games? Guys, I have played FPS games before. I may not be that good at them, but I do play FPS games. Surprisingly, my first FPS game was actually Apex Legends, and I promise I'm not stinky. What is the most normal thing that you struggle with? If I tell you, would you promise not to laugh? It's a little embarrassing. I really struggle going outside. I just don't like the sun. I have a really hard time with the sun, and my doctors had always suggested me to avoid it as much as I can, so I've always been a stuck at home teenager, at least I used to be. And nowadays I don't really like going outside that much. Probably because of that. The reason they had advised me to not go outside and be exposed to the sun so much is because it is bad and somewhat lethal for my eyes, and it can make my disease get worse, and for that reason I've always been avoiding it. What or who was your biggest help in going through your condition? Not only physically, but emotionally also. One of the people that have helped me a lot, specifically with paperwork for my disability, were my parents. For those who think that I don't have parents, and my dad specifically has gone for milk, the second person I can think of is obviously my boyfriend. And I'm sorry for those people that actually thought I was single. Um, I'm actually not. He was actually the reason I started wearing sunglasses when going out because I was really embarrassed to wear them. And nowadays I don't really care anymore. The last person who has helped me a lot emotionally, not just in life, but also through VTubing, has to be Iron Mouse. I know Iron Mouse is a really big image, and me talking about her right now feels slightly weird, but I really just want to thank her because without her, I don't think I would be here. I want to thank her specifically for helping me believe that there is a chance for me, and not just me, but other people who are in a similar situation. Iron Mouse has successfully helped me being shaped into who I am today, and I owe her everything. Jesus, what is me with these bitches today? I can't do this anymore. How see? I don't know, man. I use my toes to see. What are you talking